Hi, I'm Nikolai from Bunker Samples, and this is Intimate Violin Iremia. Iremia is a Greek word for something that is very, very quiet, and that is the whole idea behind the Iremia series. There is the viola and cello, and they are now being joined by the violin. The concept is the same for all three libraries, to record only very, very quiet sustains, textures, and swells, and mic them very, very close to capture all those details and imperfections in the sound that makes it sound intimate and human. So this is the main patch, and you get three different types of sustains. You get a sustain normale in three dynamic variations. Normale means without mute. Here is the softest. And slightly louder. And the loudest. Then you get sustains CS. CS stands for Con Sordino, which is Italian for with mute. And that is this guy, a standard rubber orchestral mute. The softest sounds like this. Slightly louder. and the most robust version of that sound. Then you get something called sustained super CS, super Con Sordino, and that is this guy. This is a practice mute, and it's actually designed to make the violin so quiet that you can practice in an apartment without disturbing your neighbors. And it is quite possibly the softest sounds I have ever sampled. It is very, very soft, fragile, and delicate, and that is the whole point of this library. So the softest sounds like this. You can really hear all the details, the bow noise, all the imperfections in the sound. I just love that. It's so fragile. And the loudest. Now you're probably noticing I'm playing only chords, and that is because this library, even though it is a solo library, is very much designed as a textual library, so it's really, really good for chords. I'll give you some single notes as well. So the one we just heard. Let's pick a sustain. You're probably also noticing that even though these are single dynamic layers, there is some dynamic control. And you actually have quite a lot of control. If you click under the dynamic slider here, you have high, boost, cut. If we turn these two off, you will notice that now the dynamic slider, which is mapped to CC1, the mod wheel, does nothing. If we turn up this, the sound gets brighter as you move the slider up, but it doesn't get louder. To get that, you have to turn up the dynamic range as well, and I like to have it quite high. If you want even more control, you can add the expression slider, and as you can see, that comes pre-mapped to CC11. So now you can play things like so very, very expressive. Moving on, you get a whole bunch of textures. These are improvised and random in nature, so they are great for chordal playing when you want to add some interest in the background that doesn't take over the whole piece. You're going to hear different notes poking out of the texture at different times if you hold a chord. So here are some bow pulses Con Sordino. And as with every articulation in this library, you also get it without the mute. Vibrato pulse is one of my absolute favorite sounds in this library. It's just gorgeous. Isn't that lovely? Of course, you get it without the mute as well. Random rebrow is a data shape, but played sort of in and out of speed. Let me play something high for you. And without the mute. Tremolo bursts is holding a static note and then adding little flourishes of tremolo at random time. So again, let me hold a big chord and then you can hear what I mean. So it's just a static chord, but there's always something happening that is not going to take over your whole composition. Without the mute, fluctuating tremolo is a normal tremolo, but it goes sort of in and out of speed. I'll play a few single notes so you can hear what I mean. So if we play a chord with that sound, and finally we have some high harmonics. And without the mute, now, if you want to hear what these sustains and textures sounds like if you layer them together, you can actually do that right inside the main pads. All you got to do is select the articulations you want while you hold Shift on your keyboard and click like this. And now we get this. So even though these are all very quiet, you can actually get a huge and very interesting sound out of this. If you click without holding Shift, it behaves like a normal key switch. Speaking of key switches, they are the red ones you see down here. And you can actually move these if you click here and drag left and right on this slider. You can put them wherever you want. If you hold Shift, you get fine control, so you can put them exactly where you want. And you can see the key switch notes on the GUI. Now, if you want the cleaner look, you can actually turn that off by clicking here, but I like to have it on, it's very useful. Now, before we move on, let's talk about the mic positions. To capture all these tiny details and imperfections in the sound, we had to get really, really close. And in fact, this library comes with 3 close mic positions, and the closest is actually inside the violin itself. We found a way to mount a tiny condenser mic inside the body of the violin. That is called the inside mic, and it sounds like this. The super close was right above the violin, pointing right at the contact point between the bow and the string, and it sounds like this. The close is a more standard close perspective, about a meter away. The mid is 2 AKG 414s in the middle of the room. And the far is 2 Telefunken M60s right at the back of the room. Now I'm going to hold a chord and just move these sliders about so you can see just how drastically you can change the sound to whatever you need. So as you can hear, it's quite easy to get it very close and intimate, or you can push the sound further away. There is another way to change the sound, and that has to do with this button, Align Sample Start. Right now it's off. When you record a single source with many microphones at different distances, there is obviously going to be a timing difference between the microphones. When this button is off, that timing difference is preserved, but you can turn that off and align the sample start to exactly the same point. And that changes the sound quite a bit. Here it is off. And on. So when you turn it on, you can hear the sound becomes darker and fuller, but you also lose a little bit of the stereo wave. But it's a very effective way of changing the sound to something brighter or something darker without needing to use EQ. Let's look at the swells. They come in 4 different lengths, each with 3 different articulations. A normale with mute and a tremolo with mute. Here is the 1 second normale. Let's hear the 2 seconds Con Sordino. So it's 2 seconds up and 2 seconds down. 3 seconds. Let's play something high. Let's check out the tremolo. Now about the normale in the Con Sordino, you can hear they're all done in a single bow stroke. But the 4 seconds are not. 8 seconds in one bow, especially on the higher notes of the E string, is a little bit cramped sounding on a violin. So I decided to do an up bow and a down bow for these, and it sounds like this. So you can hear the bow chains, and you can also hear it's not exactly bang on. And there's a good reason for that. That is because this library is sampled in whole tones, and that means that some notes are stretched a little bit more than others. They play back a little bit slower or faster than others. So to get around that, there is another patch, the Swells Time Machine Pro. Not only can you time stretch these, but it also means that the 4 second swells now will have the bow changes exactly bang on. And let's hear the Con Sordino. And as I mentioned, you can time stretch these. Let's check out the 1 second without any time stretching. And let's try to make that slower, 74%. You can hear it does affect the vibrato, so I recommend not going too far. We can also make it faster, 125%. So these are not tempo sync, but if you use the time stretch sparingly, you can get some pretty good results, whatever tempo you are working in. Now, since every articulation in this library was recorded with mute and without, I thought it would be a good idea to be able to crossfade from the muted version of a sound into the unmuted. That's of course impossible to do in real life, but Here we live in the land of samples, so why not? So that is what this patch is all about. So here is a sustained triple P Con Sordino into normale, and you do the fading with the dynamic slider. So very, very expressive, and again, impossible to do in real life. Let's check out the vibrato pulses. Isn't that beautiful? While we're here, let's talk about the effects. You get to them by clicking here, and the first thing you got to do is turn them on. This is the replica delay. You have a bunch of different modes, and you can time sync it here, or you can set it to milliseconds. Let's go with 300 something milliseconds. And you can select all these different impulse responses for the reverb. Let's go with a plate. But if I play something now, you hear nothing. Why is that? That is because these are send effects. You have to send sound to them. Where do we do that? We do that with these three lines under the microphones. You'll see a delay send and a reverb send and a pan. And for the stereo perspective, you also have a stereo width. So I like to send a little bit of, for example, the mid mic to the delay. And let's send the far mic to the reverb. Now we get this. So this way you can choose to keep, for example, the closer mics front and center, very intimate and dry, and then you can add this wash and sheen with the other mics behind it. It's a very powerful sound shaping tool when used this way. While we're talking about the mic settings, I should mention that if you mute a mic and watch the memory footprint up here, you will see it unloads these samples from memory. To load them back in, just unmute the mic. The final patch is a little bit of a bonus. Since we have three dynamics, so to speak, of each of the three sustains in the library, I thought it would be cool if we could crossfade between them. Now, it was not recorded with this in mind, so it's not perfect, but it's still a very useful little bonus. Here is sustain normale going from a triple P to a single piano. So very, very expressive, but you can get a little bit of phasing when you cross from one layer into the next. There's not a whole lot I can do about that. The only thing we haven't talked about is the ADSR controls, attack, decay, sustain, release. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, like any good library. And that is Intimate Violin Iremia, one of the most beautiful libraries I've made yet. And I think it's a fantastic tool for getting that fragile, intimate Scandinavian string sound, especially if you use it together with the viola and cello in the same series. You can get them in a bundle for a very good price, and I hope you get to enjoy the library. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.